Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. Today, my guest is a purveyor of vintage who specializes in collectibles, decor, and clothing. When he's not kicking it old school, he's hosting and creating events for his own business as well as others. Please welcome the owner of Grant's Vintage Shop, Grant Tharp. What's going on, man?
Not much. Just another Friday afternoon.
Yeah, that's how it is. I appreciate you having lunch with me. Before we start, what's your favorite go-to sandwich?
Favorite go-to sandwich has to be a Cuban, and it's got to be from Black Bean Deli or Zaza's.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried the one yet in College Park yet?
No, I really don't make it over to College Park that often because I live in Conway. So
I don't either, but I will tell you, having tried both the Black Bean and the Zaza's, make a trip to and treat yourself to one of those. It is that thing is packed. It is a freaking packed Cuban sandwich. Like it is. I've never seen so much pork on a Cuban before. When it comes to that, it's legit. So it's very, very good. Okay, so let's talk about your business. Let's talk about vintage. What made you get into it?
What made me get into it? Honestly, there's a lot of answers to that question. I'll just start. So I used to go to garage sales all the time with my grandmother. She lived down in Winter Haven, and then every time I'd visit and stuff like that, I'd ask her to go to garage sales because my parents were always so busy they never got to take me. So as a kid, I always had that love of the treasure hunt and stuff like that. Fast forward a few years, I moved into a new house. And it was moving in from, an 800-foot apartment downtown in one of the high rises into a 1,600 square foot house. Well, we need to furnish it. So what do? You go to thrift stores, you look on Craigslist, you go to estate sales and stuff like that. I started doing that, and one thing just led to another. I started picking up the old console radios, like the big ones that have the record player, and it's more of a piece of furniture than it is a stereo. And started tinkering with them, fixing them up. Had a really nice one. Had a friend come over. He said he wanted one. I sold him that one right there. And then it just kind of snowballed into doing more and more. Because I've always sold on eBay and stuff like that. But I've been full-time doing this now for a little bit over 5 years.
That's awesome, man. That's definitely, that's insane. What do you think is the fascination of vintage? Because it's like, I'm amazed by how many people are either into it, looking, shopping, buying it. What do you think is the fascination of it?
I hate to say this. Vanilla Ice said it best. Everyone's super into the 90s right now because that's the last era of pop culture. That's before social media. That's before instant access with cell phones. That's before that. So I honestly feel like everyone's into vintage now because of that. That's iconic pop culture. There wasn't access to all of it. There's limited quantities and stuff of it available, so there's always going to be that. And then on top of it too, there's this whole new generation, Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z. Everyone's moving into that repurpose, recycle, and reuse, and vintage is top of the list right there. So why would you want to do fast fashion and spend $60 or something at Zara when you could easily go to Goodwill, find a similar item, and pay anywhere from $2 to $10 for it?
Yeah, it makes total sense. What so let's talk about, so obviously your love kind of led into Grant's Vintage Shop, and you started going and doing, like, how are you gaining or getting product? I mean, I know you do estate sales. I know you go and you obviously are doing garage sale hunting, constantly going. I'm totally amazed by the fact, by the way, that Fridays are a big garage sale day. You're like the third person that's told me this. And I'm like, really? I'm like, I thought it was a weekend thing. So tell me a little bit about that, like how you've because I think you've done a really good job at what you're collecting. I feel like you have kind of like not a niche, but tell people a little bit about like what you look for Grant's Vintage. Like if someone were to go to Grant's Vintage Shop on eBay or come see you at an event, tell me what do they kind of see? What did you develop or as things that you're looking for?
Well, it's, it's like a two-part question. Yeah. So I'll answer the first part. You go everywhere. It's a nonstop thing. You'll have estate sales, garage sales, thrift stores. Those are like the main, and flea markets. Those are like the main four that everyone knows. But there's a lot more avenues to get stuff. You have local auction houses. You have store liquidation sales, like when Toys R Us closed and they were liquidating all their signs and stuff like that. That's something that I'm into, so I will go buy the store displays and stuff like that. And then we get a lot of phone calls because I deal with a lot of probate lawyers and realtors, and we get a lot of house cleanouts or people that are moving and they don't necessarily want to have an estate sale. They just want someone to come and buy it all, or they just need the house emptied so that they can sell it or flip it. So there's multiple avenues. It's a constant grind. So, there are a lot of people that do this now, and they understand some of it, but sometimes they don't. It's not like you're going to go to Goodwill every single time and you're going to walk out with a bunch of good stuff. You're going to hit a Goodwill and get nothing, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then that fifth one, maybe you might find something cool. So that's what you just have to think about, and you have to be up early, go to bed late. That's the hardest thing about this. And then what I'm looking for specifically, like my curated vision for everything, is just honestly stuff that I'm into. I've worked with Will's Pub. I provide a lot of beer signs, vintage beer signs and stuff like that, because that's something that I love. I do a lot of the vintage clothing and stuff because I like fashion and style. I mean, I have handmade shirts made from bed sheets and stuff for me personally.
That's awesome.
I like sneakers. I always have, so always like finding those. And then, toys, collectibles, stuff like that. It's just always stuff that I'm really into, like comic books, superheroes, music, just sports teams, all of that. I'm a child of the 90s, and I just love all of that. So just the chance to bring someone back and give them that nostalgia factor is honestly what I'm trying to sell more than anything. Because it's awesome to see someone pick up an item and then you see that like light in their eye, or they have that story, or they have, reminds them of, something, my grandfather got me this as a kid, and, he's no longer here with me, but this is awesome. And then it's like, now they have that item. Now they have that refreshed memory in their head and everything else like that.
Yeah. No, I think it's true. Totally true. I actually looked, I remember I saw on your Instagram, during football season was starting. It was the Cowboys game was on, and I was like, holy moly! I'm like, where does he get all these? You were literally just flipping through all the different old cowboy jerseys you had that were available, that were going to be available on your eBay.
Everyone got that confused. I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboys fan. Those are all my jerseys. I got so many messages about that.
Hey man, as soon as because when I see things like that and it's you on your Instagram and it's not your personal one, I'm like, that's for sale. I'm like, damn. I'm like, dude. I'm like, he's got it. I mean, you look at all the jerseys he's got.
Yeah.
I was like, where'd he get that? Like all those from? I'm like, that's insane.
I have plenty of jerseys, but for yesterday, since we live in Florida, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, so I had to put that out there. It's like, Tampa Bay is cool and all, but, I have an original Aikman jersey from, 92, 2 Emmitt Smith jerseys from the 90s and stuff like that. It's just funny, but you're not the only one.
Yeah, I definitely was not. That's a good thing about it. So is that kind of how, I guess the other part I'm trying to think is, obviously you, like you mentioned, I'm assuming originally you started with a lot of your inventory and stuff like that in your house. But I also know that you basically have had to shift as you obviously keep growing, and doing events and doing all these things. I'm assuming you're also going to storage. You're also putting things in storage units and stuff like that, or is everything kind of, you try to curate everything in your house? Because obviously you're trying to hopefully flip and move a lot of that stuff.
Everybody wants the quick flip, and there are a lot of items that in one day, out the same day that I get. I can post something on Instagram, it catches someone's eye, you get a message, and then boom, it's gone. But then there are a lot of long tail items that I'll hold on to for a while. They might hit a few markets first, and then they'll be online, they'll go out to markets, and then they'll sell finally after 6 months. So with that, when I first started this, I used a small bedroom, an 8x8 foot bedroom that had all their stuff. And then that kind of got overwhelming because it was still a guest bedroom, and then moved it to a 5x10 storage unit, outgrew that, went to a 10x10 storage unit, outgrew that, and then went to a 10x30 storage unit.
Wow.
And then this past October, 2020, I bought a new house in Conway, and I was specifically looking for houses with large garages. So luckily, this house that I got ended up having a 1,300 square foot garage. So that's where everything moved to and everything like that. And I try to keep everything as climate controlled as possible, but it is Florida. It is a garage. So some stuff, like you said, some stuff does make it inside the house and becomes part of my decor until it sells, basically.
Okay. No, that's it, I absolutely love it. The other thing that I find very interesting is that based on your research, you do quite a bit of like research on what the product is, especially since we live in Central Florida, especially if it's like something Disney related, or theme park related. You basically kind of do quite a bit of research. Is that stuff that you just kind of started doing research on, or you've been able, or it was provided to you, or is that something that you just kind of, being someone who you're into some of these things, so you obviously have knowledge of what they are?
I'm into a lot of the stuff that I sell, so I have a good baseline knowledge though too. And then my undergraduate degree is a humanities degree, so I will always have a love for history and stuff like that. And then it's just part of the job. You have to, in order to find the piece and everything else and put a correct value on it, you need to do the research and do the homework and stuff like that. Because a few years ago, 2 years ago, I had that Kennedy Space Center escape suit. It looks like an actual spacesuit, but it's called escape suit because it's a pressurized suit that they use to work on satellites and stuff like that. And that took actually an astronomical amount of research because you don't know what it is, you know what it looks like, and then you have to go through, find photos of where it was used, what era, and everything like that. So that took about, I want to say, a solid month of research to figure out what that thing was. And then as soon as I knew what it was, I made the post on Instagram, and then it sold within, I think, 3 hours of having it.
Great. So that's a perfect example where my next thing is, how the heck do you go for something like that and then come back and say, this is the number that you think about? You know what I mean? Like, how do you price something like that? I mean, how do you, obviously there's got to be things that there's obviously like, that is like a very unique thing. So therefore there's more of a price premium for it. But how do you even like get to a point where you're like, okay, I think pricing should be, and obviously you've been doing this for a while, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
How do you kind of figure out like, oh, pricing, this is a good number. I think people would this is a good number. It's a little bit more, but this is where people are at. Like, where do you come up with the pricing?
So with that, there are all right. So sorry. Most items have already sold, and there's a good listing on eBay, Etsy, Google itself will show you like a good price gauge, of what the item is worth. So you can be based on that. But an item like that, you have to kind of like, all right, well, I need to look at auction houses. So you go to auction houses and you go through their websites and their catalogs and all of that. And you look, same thing for Disney stuff, because I've had a lot of Disney stuff that is specifically theme park only stuff, or from an Imagineer and stuff like that is super rare, that doesn't exist. So you have to do that research. You can't find it there. Well, let's look at condition. So the escape suit itself, it's a rubberized suit. It's from the Apollo era, in the 60s. A lot of it has kind of deteriorated. We live in Florida and stuff like that. So you have to kind of count that into what the value of the item holds. How much do you think it'll cost to restore it back to museum quality? Because that's definitely a museum piece. And then you have to just go from there and just kind of name your price, and just, if it doesn't sell, you can lower your price, but you can never raise your price. So something like that, it's always key to make sure, price it where you want to be at and price high, because you can always come down. You can never go back up. So
that's awesome, dude. And so I'm truly amazed, because that's one of the things that obviously I met you because of going to events and you selling at events. But one of the things that I admire about you is that you also created opportunities and actually created 2 events. So you have the TPD Thursday and the 407 Flea. Tell me a little bit about that, how that came about, because like how you found a location and kind of like how that kind of came about for you to be able to create an event like that.
So that all came about because I've worked with the Abbey before. Remember, I had the vintage market at the Abbey, and it was all inside, and that was, pre-COVID, a few years ago, it kind of like fizzled out because we were doing it during the summer, and then in the winter, all the outdoor markets were better, and then we would do it during the summer to allow vendors and makers in Orlando to come and showcase their products, because in the summer it rains all the time in Florida, unfortunately. So we were doing that. Thornton Park District, I work with the director there. Her name's Lisa. She works closely with the Abbey and stuff like that. And then they had closed off the Circle, which is located at 431 East Central Boulevard in downtown Orlando off Lake Eola. So during peak COVID, when, restaurants and everything were allowed to be open, and then it became the city allowed for, open container law kind of, they were able to get the city to close that section. We call it the TPD Circle or the Circle. And then they allowed for World of Beer to have a satellite bar there, the Abbey, as well as a Aku Tiki Bar. So they all three of them had like a satellite bar out there. And then they would, during the weekdays and stuff, have patio furniture. We have picnic tables now all set up. So I got approached by the Abbey and Lisa to host a market because I had already done one at the Abbey. And, I had good experience with that, and everybody liked what I did. And I had already previously worked with Todd, who owns Aku and Stardust Lounge downtown, and now the 808 in Thornton Park. And I also know AD, the general manager for World of Beer. So I kind of got approached. We sat down, hashed everything out, and then we're coming on about a year. October 14th will be 1 year that we've had the TPD Thursdays event, which is a weekly Thursday night market showcasing local handmade artisans and vintage every Thursday night. It's like a farmer's market, but it's for grown-ups. It's, there's no face painting or cotton candy. There's a mobile ramen bar and Totally Coffee, which is a 90s themed coffee place. And then you have me and my buddy Greg. We have all these records and vintage clothing. And then you have Steven from Coastline Soap, who does like these really high-end soaps. Yeah. And they're beautiful. Just the way that he does it, and his whole setup is like that.
It's beautiful.
You have Powlin. You have all these vendors that, they could do a farmer's market, but showcasing them on a Thursday night with Thornton Park, because Thornton Park is called downtown for grown-ups. And this just allows, it's just a beautiful thing. And then from that Thursday night, it's like, well, maybe we should do an all vintage market, because I'm the vintage guy, my buddy Greg. And I know a lot of the people here in town that do that. And, there are markets geared towards that, like the Florida Vintage Market that happens at Ace Cafe. I know Bratz Beard has done it a few times. Kelly, that's your good buddy. But for me, that was more, every time I went there, it was like T-shirts. It was T-shirts and clothing and textile only. So I'm like true, I call myself true vintage because I like vintage everything. Yeah. From glassware to posters to video games to decor, all of that. So I talked to Thornton Park again, got it approved by the city and everything else, and we've been running strong. I think this is going to be our 6th one coming up next Saturday.
You guys do it, it's the third Saturday of the month?
Third Saturday every month. And that's another thing too, is that we gear it, for, grown-ups. We are family and pet friendly. All our events always are. But, we kind of curate that. That event runs from 4 to 10 p.m. Like, we want to catch that dinner crowd. Like, come out. We have 2 to 3 food vendors there. So this one coming up is John South Indian's Kitchen, and it's the pizza slut, Kaylee. Yep. I don't know if you've had her pizza yet.
It's good. So, and they're great and phenomenal, and it's just something that's not offered downtown really, what they do. And then we have like Dylan with Chillin' Tacos out there, which is awesome ice cream tacos. Yeah. And then we'll even have vegetarian options, vegan options with Little Lulu. She does Italian ice, which is all fruit. It's all fruit. She doesn't really use any sugar. It's all natural and stuff like that. And of course, we still have the mobile bars and everything else, and it's great. Both events kind of showcase about 20 plus vendors each time, because we are limited to the space that we have. Yeah. So each market is curated. So that's the main thing too. Like, everyone can apply and stuff like that, but it is curated. We try to keep, there's one soap vendor, there's maybe 2 or 3 jewelry people, but they're different styles or different things like that. And
try and keep it to where if you show up, you're not going to see, 4 candle people, 6 soap people.
There's nothing worse than that, because then you're competing with all those. So yeah, that's
yeah, there's no overlap.
correct. How do you, and I thought about this because obviously you have a lot of stuff of your own. So how do you how do you go and manage the aspect of setting up, running an event or hosting an event, and at the same time setting up your own stuff? Because I'm assuming you're also selling, because that's also an opportunity for you to be able to sell. So then it's like, how do you hack? Because I think about it, at least for me, when I'm setting up, I'm like, I don't have time to be able to do anything else. So like, how the heck are you setting up all your stuff and at the same time telling everyone where to go and do everything? Are you like showing up way earlier? Like how are you doing all that?
Well, I do show up early. I always show up early. But that's just me in general. You can ask Courtney. Courtney hates me because I would come for Sanford Indy. Even when I wasn't doing an event, I would come like an hour early, and she's like, "What are you doing here? I haven't even drawn the spots yet." And I'm like, "I'm here. I'm gonna just get ready and I'll hang out." Because I sell to a lot of vendors too, like in the mornings, because of what I have. Like people will finish their setup.
I've come numerous times and seen you and walked in and go, "What do you got?" And I'm looking around before I start either setting up or before, because you're right. When we get to the point of selling, there is no time to buy from your other vendors.
No, exactly. So that's why I always like being early. But yeah, for my own markets, I'm definitely early. There was, when we first started, I wasn't selling per se. Now I am. It's just, practice. A lot of the vendors that we use are the same people, and they kind of know the setup and stuff like that. And then the other portion of it is I have my good friend, and he's my business partner for the most part, because we do a lot of deals together and stuff like that. He helps me with the house clean outs, and when we run estate sales, his name's Greg Loader. His Instagram's Greg's Cool Vintage, even though he doesn't use social media at all. But he sets up. We set up right next to each other. So I'll help everyone kind of set up, and then I'll take a break, start doing my own setup, and then, during the market, I'll walk around, but he'll be right there. He knows the prices of everything, or if there's a question, he can call me, and, we're so close. He can take a credit card payment or Venmo or Cash App for me, and then he'll either just send me the money at the end of the night or pay me in cash, whatever he took, kind of thing. So it helps. It always benefits when you can have like someone that you truly rely on like that to be there for you and do that stuff.
Yeah, and at least to have someone be able to actually talk about your product or at least know about it and stuff like that. I think that's very, very, very accurate on that. So that also kind of asks, I'm kind of curious, because you mentioned when you do like, especially the 407 one where there's like a lot more vintage stuff. How do you feel that because when you do those events, some of your vendors, since you're curating it, they basically kind of realize, because you're dealing with everyone, I don't know, like a niche, like where you're kind of a little bit different. Like I'm assuming you have like some that do more records, some maybe do more clothing or collectibles or things like that. Or do you think that it's, kind of like everyone just kind of come? I just feel like sometimes when you go to certain events like that where there's so much vintage, like does it matter because you're doing all vintage? Like if you're like, hey, it's okay if you're doing vintage clothing, because I do, like in your case, you do everything. You do a little bit of, so in your case, you're like, I don't care, bring whatever you want, because I got my own stuff that I like, and I'm bringing you a little bit of everything.
So the thing with that is style. Yeah. Everybody has, like what we talked about before, like I have my own identity. Yeah. Every vintage seller has their own identity. They have their own setup and stuff like that. Like there's a few different people like that I can even like describe, the Seashell Michelle shop. She's great. She has mostly women's clothing and stuff, but she has that boho West Coast kind of vibe. Yeah. And then you have Dead Lady's Closet, Heather. She does all like that glitzy glamour, like 80s, 70s stuff, like big sequin stuff and the big brooches, costume jewelry. You have Greg, who does the records. I do kind of the toys and collectibles. Everyone just kind of has their own style, and it just kind of, it intermingles. So there are people that kind of get overwhelmed by that. But then at the same time, there are a lot of people that are in this community that like shoppers and stuff like that love that, because they can come and it's like, all right, well, there's 20 different vendors here. I'm bound to find something at one of these booths, or, I'll get something from him and I'll go here and then I'll go there. So it just allows for like a wide array of different stuff to be found and stuff like that. So it has its benefit for being in the same category, but everyone having their own type of style and what they sell and stuff like that.
No, I think that's awesome. And that's why I've always been curious, because like when I see it, I'm like, it does become a little overwhelming. But then when you put it like that, it makes total sense on how everyone's got like their own flavor and taste to it. So you run a successful business. You see many and work with many businesses that run successful, through events and stuff. What do you think makes a business succeed? And those that can't, and then at the same time, what do you think is affecting some of those businesses that don't get to that next level?
I mean, you called me successful, which I appreciate. I thank
You're welcome.
you. But, I don't see myself as success. I am successful, but, I never see myself as successful. I'm always on that hunt. I'm always on that chase. I'm always going to try and do better, figure something else out, rework something, I'm always working towards a new goal. And I honestly think that's what separates a lot of people is, I've gotten here. I'm going to take a little breather and relax. No, you can't do that. I've gotten here. It's like we got a house clean out 3 years ago just by pure luck. Once we got that, it's like now that we got that, we need to get more of those. And then we just hustled and grind, and now we have more of them. And it's like, all right, now we need to start running our own estate sales. All right, well, let's figure out how we need to do that and keep going and doing all that. It's the same thing. You just need to stay focused. You pass that goal that you set for yourself, make a new goal and do all that. And the key is not to have these big goals or aspirations. Don't try and be like, I'm going to start my business, and if I'm not by 10,000 followers on Instagram within a certain time limit, that's not going to happen. That just doesn't happen like that. I've been on Instagram for 5 years. I have 2,000 followers. But the thing is, though, is my statistics are like interaction rates are super high because the following that I've built is super interested in what I'm doing. Never base what you do on social media. Never base what you do on what others say about you or anything like that. Stay focused on your goals, what you want, and what your aspirations are, and make sure the goals are attainable and not super high or anything like that.
See, I don't know if, and I'm gonna, and I totally understand where you're coming from in the sense of not seeing yourself, but you basically said why you're successful. Basically, you just gave the recipe of why you're successful, and it's because you basically are willing and able to keep moving on, and then also at the same time pivoting and making the proper changes, and at the same time constantly increasing and going, which is one of the reasons I think it's awesome. Like I love seeing, like that was one of the things that I've admired about seeing is what you've done is that you're always, obviously, like you said, you're always in the hunt, but that's something obviously that's because you're hungry to find, as part of your business, you're hungry to find that item. And then at the same time to kind of keep growing in what it is. And that's the thing that's really awesome is the fact that you basically have gone the route of not just one outlet. You're basically like, I mean, it sounds, I'm exhausted listening to like how there's 5 different, like you can do like, I can go to 5 different Goodwills, but I can also go to a state and find like, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you got to have a hustle in order to do that because you're right. I mean, and then not to mention the quantity. So I totally get that. Which obviously then kind of leads into why do you think, or I guess what advice would you give someone who's wanting to start their own thing? Because obviously you gave, I think a lot of it you answered already, but is there anything else that you think, like if you were starting out or someone else was starting out, what advice would you give them to, if they wanted to start something on their own?
Don't be afraid of failure. I fail all the time. Fail up. There's times when I was doing this, when I first started, it's like, I don't know if I can do it because it's either I spend $100 at an estate sale or I spend, that $100 on, sometimes like food and stuff. It's like, well, but I know that on that $100 I'll be able to make, $300-400 off of. So, there are failures. There are, times where it's tough in any small business or side hustle or anything like that. And if you're truly focused and dedicated on it, it'll come to you. I mean, don't quit your day job right away. Make sure you have a good savings and stuff like that. But that's the biggest thing is don't be afraid to fail. And the second thing is honestly, don't care what people say because there's a lot of talkers out there. There's not a lot of doers. Make sure you're a doer.
There's quite a bit. There's quite a bit of people that do quite a bit of talking.
Yeah, because I mean, that's something too. It's like, are you still doing your full-time day job?
Yeah.
Or yeah, see, but you still have Deli Fresh Threads. It's a side hustle, which which is, I mean, that's probably a little bit more than just a normal side hustle, but there's a lot of people that could easily do that. You can still, like, especially with what I do, you could still work at your minimum wage job or wherever you are. You can still do that. And then garage sales and estate sales happen on Saturdays. If you have Saturday off, go to them, work Saturday. Don't go out watching college football. You can sit at home, turn the UCF game on, sit there and list right in front of your TV on eBay, and you get the whole experience. Plus, you're making that little bit of extra money and stuff like that. That's one of the biggest takeaways, honestly, because that's me myself. I used to do that all the time. I used to go out partying and stuff Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day benders. And then the older I got, the harder it got, first off. And then secondly, I realized that there's more, I gain more for my business and myself if I use the weekends to work and put in the work. And then, I'll have that one, nice Saturday off. And, I always take time for myself, but you just got to keep working, I guess. I don't know.
No, makes sense. What, I noticed, I know you sell on eBay. I know that's like your main website, correct?
Yeah. eBay is the main.
That's where so how long have you been on eBay now? And I know I saw your rating. It's like 99, like something percent. It's like pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, it was 100, but this guy, that's a funny story. I got one negative review recently because this guy, it was an old school like TV antenna that goes on your roof to get a signal. It's brand new in the box. The springs were broken on the inside because the thing is from the 1960s. It's 60 years old. Yeah. So eBay kind of sided with him. I'm not upset about it, but I'll be back at 100% here in a few months. So I'm not worried about it. But eBay is the main thing. This specific account has been open since 2018. I do have my own personal account that's been up and running since 2008. So I have two different eBay accounts. The business account is the one that I sell everything on, and then the other one is just personal use only.
Like personal use.
Which I have sold on previously, but it's more for personal use than it is for the business.
I got it. What's the craziest, I guess, I was talking to my wife and I was asking her, because I always like to ask my wife like a question of like, hey, what would you like to know about this guest? And just and the first thing out of her mouth was she's like, what's the craziest thing he's ever picked up at an estate sale?
There's a lot. Craziest thing I've ever picked up at an estate sale.
Or something that you've been like, holy cow, they have this in their house? Like,
well, the Apollo era escape suit, definitely the craziest thing. It popped up on Facebook Marketplace. He had just put it up. I messaged the guy immediately. He lived out in Lakeland. I got in the car at rush hour from downtown Orlando, braved I-4 to get to him. And that's honestly one of the craziest things. But there's all sorts of interesting items I've come across too. I had an original grand opening Fort Wilderness poster recently, which is super awesome. I had Disney stuff, original pre-production. So pre-production of Walt Disney World Resort. So this is a map that got mailed out to potential people that were going to buy into Disney World and into the project.
Oh, wow.
So it's this whole mid-century, like futuristic looking map of what the outlay will be. Like it had the Polynesian, the contemporary Magic Kingdom, and all of that already kind of laid out around, I always forget the name of the lake out there, but it had all of that right there. Super rare because it was just mailed out. People just thought it was trash. They just threw it away. That's one of the craziest things.
Wow.
I was at a garage sale one time, and the lady did production work and art development for Disney, her and her husband. So I actually got all the paint schemes and all the paint workshop stuff for Animal Kingdom when it opened up. So it shows you what the signs are throughout the park, which are still there, what the exact color number is, what it looks like, how it's supposed to look, how do you age it to make it give it that age and all that stuff. And, and then there's other weird stuff too, like stuff that I like, that I really like. I like true, like history stuff. Like we did a house clean out The guy was Native American Cherokee, and he used to live in Oklahoma, and he moved out here. Well, his family had been on the Trail of Tears and stuff like that. So there's a lot of Native American stuff in the house, but his it's got to be from his great-great-grandfather. It's a pre-Civil War Colt 45 black powder revolver. Wow. It's a gun, but it doesn't work anymore because it's so old, but super rare, super interesting. It's the original Cowboy Killer. That's the Clint Eastwood gun you see, stuff like that. And then, I've had a silk shirt with a cotton collar from 1880, manufactured in New York. It's survived. Yeah. Can you believe it? It's survived. It's over 100 years old. Shirt still survives.
Dude, those are some insane items. It's amazing.
I could go. There's a laundry list. Original whole team signed ball by the 1956 New York Yankees World Series winners. So it's got DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, and I always forget the last guy. But it's got all three of them autographed on the ball. Oh, Mickey Mantle. Oh, and then the other thing too is a game-worn autographed World Series cleat for Mickey Mantle.
Really? Mm-hmm. So for some of those things, like, when do you make that decision of I'm going to keep it for me? Unless obviously maybe if it was Cowboys or certain teams that you like, is that when you start kind of saying I'm going to keep this for a little bit and then I'll try to sell it maybe later, or is that kind of how does that work when you start playing that game? Because some of that stuff is really interesting, really unique. Where you're man, this is really amazing stuff.
So some of the stuff, there is an investment process to it. Anytime we find gold or silver, we typically keep it. We don't sell it because the price of precious metals always is going up and stuff like that because everybody has a cell phone and everything like that. But for the most part, from doing this, I really am not a collector anymore, unless it's a very oddball item and stuff like that or weird things. But for the most part, everything is for sale, kind of. There are specific pieces like the Animal Kingdom stuff, that has to be saved because that has to go to, a Disney auction and then stuff like that. But honestly, for me collecting and stuff, I collect, believe it or not, my kitchen is all 1950s themed. So anytime because it's my house is originally from 59 and the kitchen is from 59 except for the appliances. So, all along the top of the cabinets, I got old candy bar boxes from Baby Ruth, Snickers, Milky Way, and they're all the old cardboard boxes with the graphics. A lot of the old Big Boy statues, old jars like Lance Peanuts and planners and stuff like that, and just weird odds and ends, honestly, for the most part. But for everything's for sale. I kind of lost that collector's aspect because of doing this for a living.
No, that would make sense. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
I'm kind of scared.
No, these are very easy questions. All right. But these are definitely something. No, I'm just because I know they're UCF related because I know you're a UCF
all
guy,
right.
Because we're both UCF alums.
Yep, I'll take it.
So, how do you feel about Mackenzie Milton's first showing for FSU last week?
Oh wow, it was emotional. It was one of those where, so for people who don't know, if they don't watch college football, Mackenzie Milton, he was the UCF quarterback when UCF went undefeated and we won 24 in a row. He also suffered a horrible leg injury in a rivalry game, and
career ending.
Supposedly pretty much to the point where they almost were going to have to possibly amputate his leg, and he didn't play for over 1,000 days, obviously, and no one thought he would be able to ever go on a football field, and basically he graduated from UCF and wanted to continue playing and had an opportunity to transfer to Florida State and went there. And I would say he did not look like he was going to play, even though everyone thought he was. And then some, I will say Disney movie magic, the quarterback lost his helmet. And next thing I know, he's on the field and he leads a drive to score, and basically they were down by 10 and tied it up, and the kicker missed the kick to lose, so they lost. It's tough because I am very, when it comes to Mackenzie Milton, he's I guess he's he has become part of UCF lore, and he's like a legend. So it's like
he's Ohana.
Yeah, he's Ohana. And so in that aspect, like it's almost bittersweet because I feel like I'm so like I always used to always say, and I never really ever said it out loud to anyone else, but I'll take an 85% or 70% Mackenzie Milton over 100% someone else, just because of the fact of what he brings and what he does.
Yeah.
So it was amazing to see. Obviously, I'm not a Florida State fan, but I will be watching any game that he plays, and I'll be cheering for him. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of wish he was finishing his career with UCF.
Yeah,
because that's where I want him when if God forbid, God willing, he goes like somehow went pro. I want to see cards and everything that says he went to UCF and that's where he went, instead of him saying Florida State when they announced announcing the game. But yeah, it was pretty amazing. Like I got chills when I saw it, just because I'm just sad that it wasn't like at a UCF home game and everyone there to watch it and see that whole, turnaround type of thing, going from where it was. I think that's kind of where it is.
I do like the broadcasters though on that game though. They did say there's a whole bunch of UCF fans that just became FSU fans tonight.
Pretty much. And there was a lot of UCF fans that actually made the trip to go to Florida State to go to the game. And it's pretty much I'm amazed because his mom, I think, went to our UCF game the night before and then went to the Florida State game. So they basically know that we're connected. We're always going to be connected based on Ohana. So it's an amazing story. I'm hoping they make a movie. I'm hoping that FSU does great. I'm not saying amazing because I want UCF to do amazing, but I want him to do great, better than what they've been doing. And I want him to be part of the reason for it. And I want it to then become a movie years later where they make a movie about this guy, because this guy is special.
Yeah, he is. And that's the big thing I understand why he did, because he's not going to, Gabriel's our starting quarterback. So there's no way for him to get play time. So Correct. I understood why he did the move and everything like that. But it's kind of just interesting to see and everything like that. And I hope the best for him.
I'm intrigued because of in the business side of the fact that he actually did, and he's smart in that aspect where he went the route, because now because of the whole name, image, and likeness, he was able to go the route of selling. He's basically now able to sell on both sides of the fence, because he'll do a black and gold colorway, and then he'll do a garnet and gold colorway to be able to get that kind of hit both sides, because obviously UCF fans are going to support him in either way.
Well, Todd was smart. When Todd did the grand opening for the 808 in Washington, he had Mackenzie Milton do an appearance there because now they're allowed to do that type of stuff. So it was great. And then what was my other question for you? Now I forgot because I kind of got enthralled in that. When's your next event? Because I haven't seen you out doing any events.
I haven't really
done. Do one of mine?
I want to do one of yours. If I do it, the hard part is this: your event is on a Thursday.
Yeah.
So the hardest part for me is, as much as I want to do it on a Thursday, the Thursday for me is my wife's schedule is she works till 7:00 at night. Well, by the time she gets home, it's 7. Mm-hmm. So then, and I have to pick up my daughter. So on Thursday. So then it becomes one of those where it's how, and I also work. So by the time I finish to try to do it, to be able to balance, it just becomes
too hectic
to pull off. A Saturday's probably going to be, but then if Saturday's more vintage, then obviously I'm not vintage. So
well, I'm coming up. We have our holiday schedule and stuff coming out, so there'll be Fridays and Saturdays up.
So then, I definitely think it'd be a fun thing to do. I have not done as many events as I wanted to. I usually don't tend to do a lot of events during the summer, just because the last thing I want to deal with is the rain when it comes to clothes and everything like that. And and my stuff is not easy to put away or kind of hide. So
well, you wrap every t-shirt, so that gets wet. You gotta rewrap all those t-shirts.
And I'm lucky that the wrapper is at least kind of like a wax paper, so it's not so bad.
Yeah.
But it's still not waterproof enough. So I definitely don't. So for me, a lot of times my summertime, I tend to kind of lay low, and then kind of once the fall starts, I'll start jumping on events. It's just been interesting seeing the events that are coming up, and then how they're doing some, and then trying to look at what's the best way for me to go on how to sell, because some places are only doing one, you're only allowed to pick one place to go sell at. And then there's other places that, I can possibly go to, but I've never been to. And it's just trying to figure out the balance. Cause the biggest thing for me was pre-COVID, I was doing at least 2 or 3 events a month.
Yeah.
So my weekends like consisted of like, football games and going between if I on a Sunday event and if I go to a football game or whatever, but we would do that. Now I'm just trying to figure out where I want to go. Cause I think my next event's going to be, is a Milk Mart event. Is one of my next ones that's going to happen. So we'll see. I mean, one thing that I started doing more is wholesale, trying to do wholesale at some stores.
So, Mafferty's or something like that.
Well, I have visited them, but I'm actually going to be at the Neighbors.
Oh, I gotcha.
Is going to be one of them, and then I'm looking at a few other stores that I'm kind of communicating with.
Jazzlin's doing a wholesale order for the Neighbors too. Out your plants.
They're doing
It'll be interesting.
It's an interesting store. I'm very intrigued by them. I actually want to talk to Jacob about it because they already do freehand, but they also have this concept, and I'm amazed to see the stores that do, because I know you sell at other stores. You actually have don't you have some stuff in some stores as well, or no?
Yeah, I sell at Echoes of Retro. I do consignment there and stuff like that, and then I do deal with a lot of stores. A lot of stores around the area actually buy stuff from me. Yeah. Echoes is one. Diversion Orlando, which is a vintage clothing store. The Owl's Attic, which is right there in
Audubon Park.
And then stuff like that. So I deal with a lot of those people, and then so it's always interesting to see what the direction and stuff is. I'm excited for the Neighbors to be opening up because I think it's a very cool concept, and it's in the right spot.
Correct.
Basically.
Because it's basically, so what the Neighbors is, and hopefully we'll get to talk to them in the future about it, but the Neighbors is located in the East End Market. East End Market is kind of like I would say the best way to describe it is it's kind of a mixture of food hall. It's the idea of it is supposed to originally, the concept of is when you're a small business, you want to start kind of running or starting there. You can conceptualize there and use your kitchens and do that. And then while they were doing that, one of the things that opened up was freehand goods, yep. Which they do a great job. Seth and Jacob do a great job. And then they also were doing a lot of markets. And then the way I kind of describing, you can tell me what if you think is like kind of an idea of like the Neighbors. Basically, it's like all local businesses in Central Florida, and he's basically kind of housing them all in one place. I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like and what it'll feel like when you start seeing, because he's also going to provide food and beverage options there to do there, so you can shop, eat, and drink, which is different than a lot of the others. But there's quite a few stores that obviously provide a lot like their own style of what they're kind of Orlando makers and stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting conceptualization because there are a few stores like Yay Tiny Shop, Mafferty Goods,
The Good Crowd.
A lot of those shops are already here, so it'll be interesting to see what is conceptualized there. But I think it's a great concept for that area to begin with because there's heavy traffic for East End. And then not just that too, it kind of bounces off because like Brittany and Augie over at the Owl's Attics, they started kind of doing that stuff too. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
Where they opened up the second half where High Five used to be, and put in like little stalls and stuff like that. And of course you already have the Lovely that's right there, which is, just an antique mall with different booths and vendors and stuff like that. So it's a great way for everyone to get all small local businesses to get exposure, just like this podcast, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea. I mean, the idea is obviously the more people that know about you, the better. And, it's amazing, the community. I will say that Orlando has grown quite a bit in the last few years, creating this community of different vendors, and we're all kind of helping each other and supporting each other and just building more opportunities where it's not just, the theme parks where you think it's all this and that. It's like there's a lot of a really good, robust area of like diverse small businesses here in Central Florida.
Because people like me and you are tired of hearing Orlando called a transient city.
Yes, that's exactly.
Tired of hearing that.
Yep.
Orlando doesn't suck. Orlando never sucked.
Yep.
You suck.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You're the problem, not us.
Amen, man. Amen for sure. So tell people where they can find you, how they can support you. Tell them about so they can find you follow you guys on social for like your TPD as well as also for 407 Flea. Give all your info.
All my info. Well, you can find me. You can shop me personally at Echoes of Retro. There's a capsule of men's clothing as well as some furniture and knickknacks there. Wendy and Marvin do an excellent job with that shop. It's located on Virginia Drive. You can always find anything I sell on Instagram at Grant's Vintage Shop, and that's linked to my eBay account as well as that also has the links to 407 and TPD. But Instagram is pretty easy. 407 Flea and TPD Thursdays. And that's basically it.
I love it. I love it. Grant, thank you so much. That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Grant Tharp for being on, having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to check him out, like you said, online. Or if you're in Central Florida, make sure you definitely check out one of his vintage events, as well as also his other events available. If you enjoy the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. If you want to support, check out my brand, Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping. Tell your friends. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, guys.